Hello and welcome to Unstressed. My name is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Now, before I start, I would like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which I'm recording this podcast, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Well, passion of mine is lessons from the past. I think we have so much to learn from traditional cultures, from the way we have evolved. I mean, we've been on a human journey for millions of years. And really, since the agricultural revolution, it is literally not even 1% of our journey. So there's a lot to be learned from our ancestors and from Indigenous cultures. And today is such a day, what our focus is on. My guest today is Tyson Yunkaporta. He is the author of Sand Talk, How Indigenous Thinking Can Save the World. What a great title, and it's something we're going to definitely be exploring today. He's an academic, an art critic, a poet, and a researcher who belongs to the Apalech Clan in Queensland, Australia. He's also senior lecturer in Indigenous Knowledge at Deakin University, and Tyson looks at global systems through an Indigenous lens. Much of society's problems today stem from our worldview. I think we can all agree on that, and from how we think and relate and how we behave, not just to ourselves, not just to each other, but to the whole planet and, dare I say, the whole universe. That gives us a clue when Tyson writes, "I'm not reporting on Indigenous knowledge systems for a global audience's perspective. I'm examining global systems from an Indigenous knowledge perspective." And that is what we are here to discuss today. I hope you enjoy this wonderful conversation I had with Tyson Yunkaporta. Welcome to the show, Tyson.
Yeah, it's good to be in the show, wherever that is. So we're in two different locations.
We're in two different locations.
I'm in the lands of the Kulin peoples, specifically Bunurong here. Yeah, where I am now in Naarm, Melbourne. Yeah, I've been here for a few years now.
But you're originally from Queensland, or you're
Yeah. Well, that's where I am. From the last 2 years, it's been hard to get back though, with all the lockdowns and border closures and everything. It's still tricky. So that's really taken a toll on me. Not being able to connect with family like that. But it's all right. We'll get through it. It's like 3,500 kilometers away.
Yeah,
like my place. So it's up.
I think this whole thing has put people under huge stress. I mean, mental health and stress were an issue at the best of times, whenever that was, and these last 2 years have definitely not been the best of times.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting to consider how Indigenous knowledge might have changed that journey.
Yeah. It's funny. We'll come to best of times is kind of like, it's just like a less shitty time.
Less shitty time. Yeah. That's all relative, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
When was the best of times?
That's it. Well, that's the question. And I guess that would be the answer to your initial question. What the hell did things look like before?
Yes, well, that's right. I mean, we get pretty impressed by, say, a Roman Empire that lasts 1,000 years. But Indigenous people here have been around for 65,000 years. I mean, perhaps 80 or even more than that. I mean, the complexity of Australia's first people and the way it was all, what was it like?
It's certainly more than 65,000. It's just that, I mean, there are every year there are more archaeological finds, and these are announced.
Yes.
Of maybe, but I don't know how many data points you need before you can.
Well,
even if you took double the figure, but I mean, here's the thing: it's just you can't say more than 65. You can't say more than 65 because then the out of Africa theory becomes very, very difficult, and all of the migrational modeling that's been done in archaeology, which is the narrative that we have cobbled together from very limited data and very like dodgy data sets to put that story together. It can't stretch like beyond 65. You just can't stretch. It just, all the modeling starts to fall apart. So we're perching here on 65 for now, but really it's
Well, there's a whole new area that I'm reading about called archaeogenetics. Where we're not looking at fossils and stuff like that, but we're looking at genes to track that. And I know that in your book you talk about Seven Sisters Constellation, and there's seven stories, and there's the Seven Sisters of Eve in other cultures, so... But what was it? Look, even at let's acknowledge at least that 65,000 years is still pretty impressive if we take the low ball figure.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. What did it look like before invasion?
Well, different over different ages, of course. We've had sea levels rising and falling, and asteroids and volcanoes and even people going the wrong way with different cultures and societies. We've had all these same upheavals and cataclysms, I don't know. We've had our Romes here as well,
Yeah. But 250 nations, as the map is drawn now, is pretty impressive too.
Here's when you know here's when you know that people have had good governance and without hierarchies and without power imbalances and people doing the wrong thing in land and spirit and creation. Is when you look at a map and you see lots and lots and lots of small language group boundaries, tribes, whatever you want to call them, lots of small sort of provinces or regions or whatever you want to call them that tend to have these really random looking kind of boundaries to them that obviously haven't been formed by conflict and imperialism and invasion and war, but have been formed by the landscape themselves. So they tend to conform to, the semi-permeable edges of different bioregions.
Yeah.
So each region sort of has its own kind of spirit of place. And the language that comes from there comes from that spirit of place and perfectly describes everything within it, And that becomes that's a permanent ledger that you can't change.
Yeah. That's such an interesting point, that the straighter a border is on a map, the more likely it is to be imposed by man.
Yeah.
I think I've never thought of it like that.
And everybody keeps blaming agriculture as, that was the point when everything changed, and that agriculture requires hierarchies and power imbalances and imperialism and, stockpiling and artificial scarcity for control and all that kind of thing. But it doesn't. The oldest architecture on the planet's in New Guinea. Not architecture, oldest agriculture. They were doing it before anybody else. They've been doing it for tens of thousands of years there. But, when you look at that, there's more diversity of language per square inch there than any other place on the planet. So when you look at that, you look at the amazing diversity there and so many different languages and cultures compressed into one place. They haven't been doing imperialisms there. They haven't been doing unsustainable hierarchies, etc. It's just evidential. There. Yeah.
Are the languages, are they really that so distinct? From one clan to another?
They really are. It's an anomaly on the planet in terms of, Australia is amazing. If you look at the Australian Indigenous map, it's just this patchwork quilt. And lots and lots of small groups and all quite very different languages. But New Guinea is just this outrageous diversity. Linguistic diversity. They're just, it's something that linguists and anthropologists have been puzzling over forever. Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned, the agricultural revolution, and when it happened, it seemed to push us into a more patriarchal structure. How does that play out in an Indigenous culture? Women, equality, women's role in society. That's been thrashed out over the tens of thousands of years.
Yeah.
It's not. Is it an issue in Indigenous culture?
Not particularly. We have both matrilineal and patrilineal cultures in Aboriginal Australia. You won't often hear that, but there are. So I belong to a patrilineal culture, which means you take your father's name and father's totems. A matrilineal one, you take your mother's totems. However, in both, that mother and child is the center of everything. You know what I mean? I think the main difference between patrilineal and matrilineal Aboriginal cultures is that the patrilineal ones tend to do more adoption
Okay.
They're sort of more open in terms of bringing all different kinds of people in and sending others out. So there's more embassy with the patrilineal cultures, whereas the matrilineal cultures tend to have more protected bloodlines. Yeah, that they'll maintain a single bloodline for tens of thousands of years, whereas the patrilineal ones are keen to mix it up. But I guess that's the that's the difference between the sperm and the egg, I suppose. But in both, there is always a core of women's business and a core of very powerful women. So there's a difference between patrilineal and patriarchal. Patriarchy
Yes.
is a very different thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where we've been, really. I mean, I think one could argue that it hasn't. How's that played out over the last 10,000 years? It's probably too early to call, but it's not looking good.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something about I think it's about scale. It's when a culture chooses to decenter the mother, to devalue the mother.
Yeah.
And that must be done in the society. So women must be devalued and taken from the center of power and authority, which are two different things, by the way. Yeah, women's authority must be diminished in order for people to begin insulting and assaulting the mother, the earth. You can't do that to the land while you have the mother in her center of power and authority, in your society. She has to be removed, devalued, debased, owned, extracted from, in order for your society to take the shape it needs to begin project of growth. And growth is where it happens. So where the problem began is it's been a problem of scale. And you can see that with the early civilizations. So you'll see that in the Fertile Crescent. You'll also see that in Africa. Africa did experiment with empire. Pretty much, some of the oldest empires in the world are from Africa. But, as within the Middle East, these were gradually abandoned after they completely ravaged the place. And then people find a return to, other models like pastoralism and, migratory. Not migratory, but sort of seasonal movement, around a sort of a territory. People will return to some kind of, it's not even really a return because it's not exactly as it was before, but, the patterns of sustainability and more hierarchical models of being, are retrieved forward, to create new ways of life, ways of living within a landscape that, has been altered horrendously.
Yeah.
In the Middle East, you see where all the early civilizations were. And I mean, it's desert now. So the culture that arises from the ashes of the civilization, now that it's desert, the culture has to be quite different, So you sort of see that. You see that everywhere.
Yeah, you'd think, there was a lesson in itself calling it the Fertile Crescent. And yet when you visit it, you kind of think, okay, where is that? Where is that now? But it's interesting because growth has become just a buzzword that is equated to a healthy country, healthy economy. Well, what role did growth play in the journey of the Indigenous peoples?
Look, it's that question of scale again. Yeah. And every culture has its cautionary tale about communities that attempted scale in order to accrue power, accumulate power, etc. So we have those stories here, Tower of Babel kind of stories. So I do talk about one of them in the book, which is a Goanna story from Western New South Wales. Bakunji people, everybody, figured out that if they stayed in a place of abundance and became sedentary and just started building up and concentrating all of their collective efforts, in one site, that they could achieve just, massive things, that would like rival the power of gods kind of thing. So they create this kind of egregore of, people there. And so, of course, that's where your meteors are going to fall. And just to sort of break that back up. So all the people there started speaking one language even, and they started to forget all of their different languages. So, of course, the land set them straight again. And it usually takes a few centuries. It took 1,000 years for the land to sort Rome out and break it back up again. when you look at Italy now, you can see that map of the peninsula with all the different regions.
Mm.
And they all have their own dialects. Like there's 21 on a tiny peninsula that's smaller than New South Wales. 21, 22, I can't remember how many.
Yeah.
But lots of different provinces, all with different languages. And you sort of go, okay. So they all speak Italian, but at the same time, they don't speak Italian at home. Italians. It's the same sort of thing, I guess. Gradually, you will move back towards diversity. The land forces you to do this. You can't escape it. So this sort of cultural uniformity, this creation of monocultures and massive machines, like a self-organizing entity of a city or a large community that ends up on that arrow of growth, that upwards trending arrow, that exponential growth wants to harness that big illusion. Yeah, they think they can last forever, but they really don't.
Now, you also mentioned you take on your father's, you come from the patrilineal and you take on your father's totems.
Yeah.
Totemic culture and animistic culture is very much part. Could you explain those two terms? Like
it's almost impossible to explain. It's almost impossible. If I feel like if I could explain that in a way that it would go in, everything would be fine. But it's almost impossible to know it unless you're in it. If that makes any sense. I mean, the most accurate way I could describe it is it's like spirit animals, and spirit guides, but for grown-ups. If that makes any sense. Like, how people say, oh, that's my spirit animal or whatever, I am the eagle or something like that because I see far. It's nothing like that at all. I mean, it's usually you don't have one totem, you have several, and these are inherited and they're usually part of a story. So while I take Brolga from my father side, at the same time, so that's Pulwai, but that comes with a whole heap of other ones that are attached to that, like Mudshell and Black Cockatoo and all these different ones that are all in that same story.
Mm-hmm.
So, all these things that are in the same story, which is about places, which is a map. And, and that map is, you care for all these places and all of these things and all of these entities. And you are them. You're part of that living system, not just of knowledge and history, but of maintenance of that country, and not just maintenance but increase. And that's different from growth. And that's another hard one to explain. But that's just father side totems. But you still have mother side,
right?
So you have Katwai and even Kemwai, grandmother, things that you reference and that you are in your awareness, for your family and your kin, because you're in that sort of network of relational obligations. And each clan sort of, has that, where everybody has their focus on different particular sites. That is their main responsibility, and then, and you gather in this sort of collective sense making, and everybody is seeing different things, and you're bringing those data points all together, and they kind of aggregate into a collective, one belly, you might describe it, in a sense of what the land is doing, and therefore how your society must move with the land, and how your activities and your ceremony and your governance, even everything is directed through that. You have that open communication with the landscape that can only happen if you are embedded in it collectively, if you know what I mean. And that's what the totems do. They're not your individual, guide, like spirit guide or something like that, Yeah, and that then is networked in with the other clans, So, your totemic system might center around a particular season, whereas another clans might center around a different one and a different ritual complex and everything else. And these must be in dialogue together as well. And so then you start to see this kind of nested fractal governance structure that can scale, that keeps going up from individual to family to clan to tribe with all the clans, but then to a regional group of tribes who are also in, a collective relation. But then beyond that, collectives of regions that are also in that relation. And then it scales up again until, and all these different levels of law have different names. until you arrive at a continental common law. And that's sustainable and regenerative and prevents imperialism, because your most sacred knowledge is also stored by somebody or a group of people in another tribe, maybe thousands of kilometers away. You know what I mean? There are people who keep your most sacred law there, and then you keep the sacred law of other groups of people in your place, so that if anything cataclysmic happens there, that knowledge can go back to that place, and that can be repopulated there. But also it prevents imperialism. You know, you can have battles, but you can't have war, and you can't take anybody's stuff. You can't take anybody's land as a result of war either, because you're prevented from doing that by that big interconnected, interdependent system of laws where you're trusting your most sacred to other people. So you end up with that really, truly interdependent, scalable system of governance in which every single person is completely free and can't be bossed around. But at the same time, you're so bound up in a network of relational obligations that, you know, you also can't do the wrong thing and start to pollute the commons or extract more than you should or do something that will create disharmony.
I mean, overridingly, what I came away from was the connectedness of everything. You know, I mean, I can see. I look at the coat of arms, for example, on the Australian coat of arms, the emu and the kangaroo, and always looked upon them as iconic Australian animals.
Yeah.
But you had a whole story behind the difference between the emu and the kangaroo and what lessons we can learn from them. The echidna, who knew? Who knew the echidna? Tell us a little bit about some of these. You know, we just look at these things like they're animals, but there's so much more than that.
Well, the echidna is amazing. And it's actually really hard to find the research. So doing the fact check on that, like I couldn't find the papers that I'd originally read about that. But yeah, I still had the notes I'd taken, but I hadn't written down.
Yeah, but the
when you're doing
the
your
cultural
citations, it was very difficult.
Yeah, I do.
But people
I
since have dug those things up for me and said, no, it's here. And there's an entire book about it somewhere as well. You know, so the research has been done. But it's just amazing because echidnas have the biggest brain in relation to body size of all the mammals, and it's just an outrageous amount of that is that neocortex and the abstract high level reasoning and executive function and everything else that there's a bigger percentage of their brain that's used for that than even ours is, and that just makes me go,
wow. It made me go, I mean, who knew?
What are they doing when we're not looking, you know?
Yeah. So I think you said something like, I think 50% of whatever. A big proportion of their brain is prefrontal cortex for reasoned thinking. And,
that's it.
You know, they've been around for a while. So, you know, they must be doing something right through a whole lot of changes in environment and all that. But what about the emu? I mean, I'm never going to look at the coat of arms again in the same way.
Yeah. Well, when we look at that coat of arms, we can see I don't know what anthropologists call a moiety system, like two moieties. So it's a kinship system where you have two halves. And then that also breaks up into different groups as well, you know, for marriage law and all this sort of thing. But yeah, so you might have, you know, emu totem on one side and kangaroo totem on the other. And you're only allowed to marry across. You can't marry someone in your own side.
But it was something system. About the sort of arrogance or something of the emu compared to
there's absolutely that.
The story.
It's
the story is what I love.
That, I don't know. The way I chose to go with it was the narcissism side, but then I also make sure that people understand that's my prejudice as well, because you know, emu people might see, well, they do, like people with emu totem see the stories very differently. But for me, because I'm Brolga, I'm like, you know, that bastard emu, you know, because it was an emu wronged us, you know.
Yeah.
So there's that idea of this narcissistic emu who wants more and wants to uplift themselves above everybody else, and sort of is vain and is proud and is just crazy and showing off and trying to boss everybody. And and all that sort of thing.
It made sense to me because when you watch an emu run, they almost look like that, don't they? They look like they're better than everybody else.
Yeah, they really do. They really do.
What about
I had a female emu try and seduce me once.
Wow.
Like they have a very explicit and specific sexual display they do. And it was this one. It came right up to me and just did that. And it was, I don't think I've ever been more disturbed by anything. Ever. I was just like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
There's something really wrong going on in this place. If this one is
nothing
attempting
like
some like interspecies erotica with me. It's like, no, you need to.
But the echidna never had that experience with the echidna?
No, I'm pretty sure I would remember it if I did.
It would be another thing that's really a word. The word country is means, you know, like for us, it means a nation, or you look out on that. But what a country means a whole lot more in Indigenous cultures, doesn't it? Tell us a bit about what country, and the other word that comes to mind is time. Those two words are very different. What do they mean? You know, can we talk about that?
Well, in a lot of the modern languages of the world that have sort of come out of this this global system that's developed, you know, the language reflects the core principles of that. So you end up with a lot of abstracts separated out from each other. You know, so you have words for things you don't need words for, like nature and economy and society and government, and all of these things, and spirituality, like all these big abstract nouns that pretty much never existed in human languages, because we don't need them, because they're all one thing, you know. They're all one thing, and that's country. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense.
And if you have country, then you are country as well. You are embedded in it. You know, you're a node in there, and you have free will, but you're part of that system. And, you know, the land, you know, what people refer to as nature often now, that's the patterns of nature, that these things and the movements in that, they direct you in your governance, in your trade, in your family structure, your values, all of these abstracts. So, yeah, so country is just, it's something we've tried to use an English word to express something, but it's the same word, but we use it differently. You know, like we don't say our country or the country. It's just, it's got no definite article or indefinite article in front. You just say country.
All encompassing.
Yeah.
All encompassing. In time. I mean, time is another one, isn't
it? Even you might greet relatives in that you refer to that person as country. You might say, hello, country. Hey, country, when you see somebody who's, you know, from the same place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole concept of time as well. I mean, that's a different way of looking at the world too, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we don't have separate words for time and place.
Yeah.
It's one thing. And often it's not even a word, but like a suffix that you put on the end of a word. You know, like gu, ga, ba, all these sorts of suffixes that go on the end of the word, and they might mean time or place, but it's the same suffix, you know. So there aren't separate words for those things. Yeah.
And tell me, with when we talk about, another thing that I heard you talk about was Indigenous law, you know, Indigenous justice. And I loved your, you know, there's law, L-A-W, and law, L-O-R-E.
Yeah.
And they're very much connected. Tell us a little bit about, you know, how Indigenous justice is seen.
Yeah, well, the justice is, you know, I can't say it's not punitive. Basically, it's just human. It's just human justice. You know, we, as humans, you do feel that urge for payback. And, you know, we're discouraged from that in a lot of the religions and ethical frameworks and laws and all that sort of stuff in modern times. But you do feel that urge for payback. And you feel that urge for that person has to answer. But the idea is to bring everybody back into right relation again. Because if the law is broken, that also breaks the relationships and community cohesion. And so punishment is all about everybody making sense of what's happened and then carrying away a good story from that. cautionary tale. And, and it's kind of like your transgressor is somebody who holds that story, and then they take up an important role of somebody who has that story. They become, they're able to pass through that punishment and come back into respect, come back into their dignity, but then also your victim. So your victim and transgressor, they might fight, and that might be the resolution. That might be the legal action that happens. And it's not like with my beloved Vikings, where, it's like, yes, well, we shall let the gods decide, and we shall have the combat. And, you might have one little skinny dude and one massive guy with an axe, and like, oh, well, the gods decided the skinny guy was wrong. It's not like that. It's not about, like, the fight doesn't have a winner or loser. When it's a legal issue, the fight is all about, it's just about the fight. It's just about, a victim being able to hold their head up. And it's not about one of them coming out on top and a decision being made in the favor of one or the other. Because when you have a completely transparent society, there's no argument about who the wrongdoer is. They can't say not guilty but be lying, because everybody knows what everyone's done. So you have a victim and transgressor, they slug it out, and the victim gets to walk away with their head held high no matter what the outcome of the fight is, because they were able to stand up for themselves. They were able to, participate in that justice, and everyone can participate in that. Yeah, and everybody makes sense of what's happened, through that. And there are all kinds of punishments like shaming, temporary banishment, spearing, spear the leg traditionally, all kinds of things. Punishment cut. I did get a punishment cut once, and that wasn't for something that I did wrong, personally, like individually. That was for something that the elders said that was something that one of my ancestors did a long time ago that was never addressed.
Right.
And that I had to have that.
Yeah.
And that was something that I did. I mean, that would be intolerable in a Western legal system, wouldn't it? Sort of individualized world. It would be like, it's not my fault. I can't be held to account for some system of slavery that some distant ancestors did. I'm not responsible for that. And it's like, well, in our way, yes, you are.
Yeah.
I had an ancestor who was a rapist and an abductor of women, and a murderer, and he was never. He got away with that,
right?
And it was like, well, you're coming to this place where that woman died, and you're going to have a punishment cut for that, and that's not about we're going to make you the scapegoat, and now your life's over to pay for that. It's like, no, this is ceremony, and it's justice, and it's something that brings us all together. It's something that settles, something that's been an imbalance and causing problems for hundreds of years, and we're going to resolve that together now, and we're all going to heal together from it.
I mean, while it's punitive, it's also forgiving, where you can move on.
Well, the elders immediately after they cut me, they were then responsible for healing that cut as well. Right. But it was also, there was a kind of there was a ceremonial action in there as to whether or not that would be accepted. The punishment was accepted by the spirit of the female entity in that place. And so after the cut, which was pretty deep and horrific, they had to put my blood and my hands on this rock and watch the wound to see what would happen. And it just... It was wow. I don't know. It was pretty miraculous. I didn't film it, so we don't have the data or anything, because you don't do that. But it just closed up. Yeah, it closed up, and it was just this tiny thin line. It was to the bone, the cut, but then it just closed right up until it was like a scratch.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, on a physiological level, if your autonomic nervous system is working for you, your healing will work better. There's that placebo effect is an undeniable thing, and it's the problem. I mean, it's really funny. You can only deploy the placebo effect in Western science as a control. Yes.
You know what I mean? And even it's an annoying thing that sort of that messes with your controls.
but it's such a powerful
at the same yeah, exactly. It's very powerful, but it is of the land and spirit, and it can't be harnessed. Like medical sciences, I mean, they can prove that it's there. They know it's an effect, but nobody's ever attempted, because scientists aren't silly. You can't harness magic. You can't harness the power of the placebo effect in science, because it doesn't work like that. You know, you can't tell people, oh, we're going to prescribe you a placebo, and so you can believe yourself into wellness, you know, collectively with your family. It doesn't. It can only be, you know, collective. It can only be embedded in the landscape, and it can only be through ceremony. Is the only way that can work. But that doesn't work at scale. Like nothing works at scale. You know, there is community health, but then there's public health at a national scale, which, as we've seen, it doesn't scale well. You know, ceremony doesn't scale well as a wellness thing, because you just get cults. You get cults that are really unhealthy and that are usually based on a hierarchy, and that damage a lot of people.
Well, I think one of the things we've learned from this pandemic is there's a power in our local community.
Yeah,
you know, we've kind of globalized everything, globalized the world is everywhere. We've got friends everywhere. You know, what's around us in our immediate circle is what's so powerful.
That's it. But this is what makes the wellness industry problematic, is the scale. Well, industry for a start, you know, you industrialize wellness. You know, in response to, you know, a massive juggernaut of public health that leaves a lot of people behind. You know, in response to that, you end up with a wellness sort of industry. But when that scales, it's just a mirror of the other thing.
Absolutely.
And it's neoliberal in that it's like Margaret Thatcher, there is no society, only the individual. The entire wellness industry is focused on self-help, what you do for yourself. You make yourself this Ubermensch who, you know, through supplements and through testosterone therapy and breath work and mindfulness and meditation, you become this fabulous well thing, a tool that sharpens itself. Never mind who's holding that tool and what's being done with it. You know, so you have this wellness industry that does not focus on the only way that you can have health, which is in community. Because you can be this amazing bloody person who's you know, done 1,000 crunches and a bunch of hot yoga and is just like, you know, ready and fit to be a tool of whatever you like, Hindu nationalism, freaking neoliberalism, whatever you want. You're this perfect, you know, being who's ready to, you know, be a warrior for the, you know, your national identity, or, you know, your corporation or whatever. But you're not an island. People forget that they will need care. All of these fit, healthy, supplemented, awesome. Oh, my immune system is bloody amazing. You know, oh, that's great. But one day you're going to need care. In fact, several times in your life, you're going to need care. And eventually you're going to need like a lot of care. And who's going to do that? And it's sort of, you might think, well, it helps if everybody's looking after their own health. That means there's lots of healthy individuals who'd be able to provide that care. And it's like, well, no, because those healthy individuals are out in the world, you know, pursuing their personal development. They're running around manifesting abundance for themselves. And they're not going to be, you know, burning their life in a task that has no value and is not paid economically. They're not going to be caring for people. So if you don't have a healthy community that prioritizes care and that centers the woman and child, the mother and child, if you don't have a healthy community, you don't have health. You know, you have a healthy community, then you have care, and you have an aggregate of health that sorts you out. But anything that you're doing yourself for yourself, that's an illusion. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're Tarzan swinging from vine to vine. You can't stop and hold on to one of those vines for a second, or it'll snap and you're going to break your neck. You know, wellness has to be about community, clan, family, village. That's the only wellness. And you can't have it at one end with the individualized wellness industry, and you can't have it at the other with the massive juggernaut of public health. They're both a wrong story. And I know, I feel like when I look at your book, I feel like that's where you're headed to.
Yeah,
like that's where you're directing our attention.
Absolutely, and I think one of our most popular or important themes is globalization versus localization. And we talked to Helena Norberg Hodge.
Yeah, me too.
She's great. She's
I've spent a fair bit of time with her.
That message is so powerful. It's so important. And interestingly, Harvard have done the longest official study, on health, wellness, and longevity, and the greatest predictor is relationship. That is the greatest predictor of longevity and health and wellness. It really relationships. Is. It's not cholesterol level. It's not blood pressure. It's not even it's relationships. So, this whole idea of localization and community is the lesson. I mean, I was going to ask you, about this pandemic and what lessons would traditional knowledge have given us, and how would we have done it differently if Indigenous knowledge was in charge? What would you say to that?
Oh, well, it just wouldn't happen. You can in an Indigenous governance system, similar to what Norberg Hodges is talking about, when people are really focused on being embedded in their local landscape and place, and that's their culture and language and governance and everything else. And that doesn't mean that you're just staying put there forever and you never see the world. You actually, you are traveling out and interacting, but you have trade relations with everyone else. But if your governance is not about governing millions of people all speaking one language all together, who are supposed to be as similar as possible, otherwise it doesn't work. When instead you have true diversity, then you can only ever have an epidemic. You can't have a pandemic. Pandemic only happens within pan structures, and that's it. So it just wouldn't happen for a start. But I don't know. There's pretty much, and here's the problem with Indigenous knowledge: just looking at a globalized system of just individuals all pinging around under a really horrendous, placeless economic system, just struggling for survival. Suddenly going, oh my God, now there's a pandemic and it's killing everybody. Trying to apply Indigenous knowledge to that, and within that, it doesn't work, because all you can do is lift bits and pieces out that don't work outside of their context. And therein lies the rub. Everybody's seeking these answers from Indigenous knowledge, Indigenous wisdom. And it's like, well, if we can just apply this bit, if it's like, oh, okay, well, Native Americans, they have a verb-based language instead of a noun-based language. So perhaps if our systems of accounting incorporated measurement of verbs, of action relations instead of just nouns, measurable quantities, if we could somehow quantify that and, develop an accounting system for that, then that would change the economics. And it's like, well, kinda, but not.
But I think where it comes in is that it impacts on individuals and communities. And when you start that, then you start from the ground up. You start to have a society that looks a little healthier than it currently is. But
this global system is a self-organizing system now. It's that big and that complex now that it's actually self-organizing, and it does have a very good immune response. It has an excellent immune response to anything that could be a challenge to it.
Oh yeah, it shocked me. It shocked me.
The moment you get any kind of grassroots sort of gathering of people around, let's say they all go to Byron Bay. Let's say 10,000 people in Byron Bay all decide to go with Helena's Norberg Hodges sort of localized futures model.
Yeah,
that's destroyed immediately. And one of them is in one of your 4 pillars, like communication, human communication, which has always been our strength. At scale, it's not a strength anymore; it's a weakness. So it very quickly there. that could be just, that's always just completely shattered and divided. Everyone's divided with it. It's very simple, just through communication. It's like, you just throw in, so what does everyone think about trans kids in sport? And then immediately there's factions. You know what I mean? It can be just the tiniest bit of disinformation, rumor, anything. Suddenly everyone's in splinter groups, and you got your anarcho-syndicalists over here, and then you got your anarcho-communists over there, and you know what I mean?
And then we're arguing about them
along lines, because
then we're arguing about
like, what's the definition of sex and gender? They're arguing about what's the just to go with that, like, most silly divisive debate.
Yeah.
When it's just like, no, it's be nice to people. That's that's
but that's
a she. That's a they. It's easy. Anyway, it's just a silly debate. But I mean, everything. It's funny because when these things happen at scale, everybody personalizes it. So I mean, and I think that's a really good example, is that way that that trans activism and trans rights has been co-opted by everybody to be part of their personal branding, of any issue.
Yeah.
So that something can happen, like, in like Ukraine, so recently there's horrendous stuff. Kids just being scarred for life and killed, and horrible things going on. And immediately everybody personalizes it to whatever their issue, their, signature issue is. So all anti-trans warriors, culture warriors and stuff are immediately, well, there you go. That's what you get when trans kids are allowed to play sport. It's like, holy crap. What are you doing? What are you doing? But this is the problem. I mean, this is like one of your 4 pillars is communications. And so that's what happens when you scale it beyond the local. Your communications in terms of sense making. Once you try and scale that so that everybody is supposed to be alike in thought, word, and deed, and have a general agreement on what's real, that it's just this immune response of this global system is just amazing at breaking up something like that. There's like there's all kinds of antigens and things going on there, and there's memory T cells and all kinds of things there that people remember the structure of, just undermining each other and debating and arguing and competitive dynamics, and that'll usually break it up. But if it's really strong, then you've got to send in some killer T cells, and so it's very easy to just send an agent in there undercover who can just try and reignite some debates or sabotage things. The whole thing just falls apart. It's got a very good immune response.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with the idea, this faith that people have in grassroots emergence of new systems.
Yeah, I must admit,
but at the same time, revolution on the other side doesn't work either.
No. I mean, I've come away from this whole pandemic more committed, really, to local.
Yeah.
Because I kind of feel I've been shocked by what I used to refer to as news services. I now refer to them as media outlets.
Yeah.
They're not news services at all. They're media outlets for corporations. And the size and the power of that immune system that I think you're referring to is quite staggering, even to someone who has been following it for at least the last 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
I'm just shocked. So I kind of think, okay, where do I go from there? I can only go local. I can only go with my community, with my clan, with my family, with my, those around me. So
could you imagine if that was the global sort of response to a pandemic?
Well, that's why I think
instead of us having to lock ourselves for 2 years in rooms as individuals, what if it was more about, okay, you're going to stay local, you're going to stay in your county, in your shire, whatever it is. We're going to do that for 6 months, a year. Here, let's break all the work down to part-time, and you can all do some, make some permaculture gardens together, because supply chains will be disrupted. So there's
an awful lot of grass outside my house.
Exactly, grow some of your own food for a bit. Run some goats, make some cheese, do whatever you need to do. Yeah. But be local and really just connect with each other. It's the mental health issues wouldn't have happened. The spread of COVID, I mean, you wouldn't have all the variants that you've got right now. So it's funny. It's like this opposite actions happened in trying to do these massive, large scale monocultural interventions, which have been, people didn't want to do that. Every nation wants to have their own thing. Every state wants to have their own thing. But that's still too big in scale. In doing that, it hasn't united anybody. It's kind of broken everybody up.
But I think it's too early to call.
But it could have gone.
I'm an optimist.
It could have gone the other way, And the funny thing is that the only diversity that's come out of this is in the virus itself. It's doing really well. It's got all kinds of variants, and I don't know. I just feel like if people could have been on lockdown in their regions rather than in their houses or in their neighborhoods, even, then that would have been a very different outcome.
And it would have been a very positive one. A very positive one.
Yeah.
We would have come out of it going, hey, maybe this is the way to go. Maybe what we should be doing is this. Instead, they locked us up, scared the shit out of us, made us anxious. I think they call it a mass psychosis. I've been reading about that. And I think there's a point to that. But listen, another thing that I wanted to ask you about was, because in it wasn't 2020, it was 2008, Kevin Rudd's 2020 summit, you came up with the idea of Indigenous Knowledge Centres, and you described it, and I thought it was brilliant. And obviously they did at the time think it was brilliant too. Tell us about that vision and how did it turn out?
Well, as with most things, the lowest common denominator, tokenism, window dressing. So the idea was about having places that would kind of researching and coming up with solutions for global problems, but utilising Indigenous methods of inquiry, Indigenous knowledge. So Indigenous knowledge systems, to study all the other systems that are going the wrong way in the world and actually try and do some innovation from that. That was the idea. What we ended up with was Indigenous culture centres. Yep. So they put millions into it, and then they did a consultation nationally, like at the national level. They must have spent millions just on the consultation. Every community, Indigenous community, consulting, and then they sort of aggregated that, and then they just picked out the parts that were in common right across the board for every single group. And so, of course, these were the simplest ideas, and which are always going to be the ones that are in common when you're trying to get a consensus that's not actually aggregating everything, but it's just kind of just finding data points in common. Yeah, so it ended up just a series of culture centres. I visited one in Brisbane when they happened, when they finally came out, and it was just art, Aboriginal art on the walls, some artefacts in glass boxes, and sort of someone curating collections. There was a display that had, and it was lovely, a display there that had all records and memorabilia of famous Aboriginal country music artists, stuff like that. And it wasn't what I'd envisioned, but anyway, that's I have finally realized that, and we've started an Indigenous Knowledge Systems lab at Deakin University, and it's we're coming into our second year now. And it's starting to attract a bit of funding, and so we're able to sort of grow our activities there, and we're doing some really cool stuff. We're consulting on a heap of different projects, from designing affordances into public parks that will create microeconomies, but just through the design of the park itself, like stuff like that. And from that to like mental health for astronauts. We're doing that kind of thing, which is really cool. Yeah, we're messing around with algorithms. We're right across a whole heap of different areas. Just really looking at a lot of big problems.
Because I thought there was really, I got that the knowledge centres didn't come off, but I thought it was really important, that strict protocol that you pointed out in your book about four levels. Respect, connect, reflect, direct. The non-Indigenous approach is exactly the opposite. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit give us an example of respect, connect, reflect, direct, and how we got it so wrong? I mean, I guess the invasion was one example, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it's just a process. It's a protocol, I guess. Yeah, it's a sequence of relations, and everybody has it. It's just that I don't know. Maybe it's because the northern hemisphere spins the other way, but it for some reason, people started doing it backwards and not starting in respect. Everybody finishes in respect. In the end, everyone comes back to that, but often it's too late. People come in at the direct end, and they act, they intervene, and they start doing things, building things, making things, and then it all goes wrong. So then they kind of start to connect. Asking people, what the hell, why isn't this working? And they start, connecting with people. And then that brings them into reflection, the reflect phase, where people start to come together and make sense of what's happened together. Now that this big disaster's occurred and it's all gone wrong, and people end up, in good relation at the end, and they start to, they have that respect then. That'd be great if you learn from that and then start doing it back the other way, which is the right way. You start with the respect, and then you connect and build the good relationships and do your thinking together. Then with the reflection sort of side, you do that collectively, and then, direct, which you do collective actions.
Yeah.
Never, if you do it that way, it's impossible for unilateralism to occur. You can't have one person going, no, I know that leaded fuel, I know that lead in petrol will work, and I'm going to make it happen. That guy, that was a real dude.
I know. I've read about him. I've read about him. Thomas Medley. Thomas Medley, I think
he had more of an impact than any other organism that's ever lived on this planet.
I think we've read the same book
because just unilaterally. It's a story. I haven't read. I didn't read it in a book. I've heard people talking about it. It's come out of those yarns, probably from people who read it. Yeah. But that's what really struck me about it, though, was that he had severe depression, and he was very unwell. He had a lot of stress-related illness, brother. And he was single-minded in pursuing this goal, and he was, very positive thinking. He never gave up. He followed his dream. He pursued it to the end, and in the end, he was successful. And he died like alone and in massive amounts of pain.
Yeah.
But he was successful. He painted this thing. He got it done. He got leaded fuel out into the world, and nearly killed it.
Well, he killed a lot of other people along the way.
It took a lot of people working together to figure out how to get the lead out of the fuel again. And,
Do you know that same guy actually invented CFC in the fridge and refrigeration as well? So he was respected. He was, that was the ozone layer as well.
I didn't know that one.
Yeah, it is. Huge. It's funny you should mention.
So he put a hole in the ozone layer.
He put a hole in the ozone layer.
Everybody and everything.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Yeah. But I think that is such an important message to leave us with, because we come to the end now. But to think about Indigenous knowledge as a process of respecting, connecting, reflecting, and then doing.
Yeah.
Wow, what a different world we would have now. But Tyson, got to thank you for writing the book. I mean, I loved it. I enjoyed it. There's so many parts to it that it just took me to another place.
Yep.
The two of us. Us two. Yep.
I'm writing another one now.
You are?
Faster, bigger, better, more.
Are you really writing another one?
Yeah. I'm about halfway through it. I'm really struggling with it. But
what do you do? Give us a preview.
Yeah, the working title was 12 Ways to Avoid Lists in the Anthropocene.
Very good.
So this idea of trying to get people away from these heuristics and these gurus and these cults, and just that kind of bad science of trying to package everything up into a respect, connect, reflect, direct. For example, and just realizing how much of my thinking's been co-opted by that, whereby I'm spitting out these same freaking things as well. For respect, connect, reflect, direct. That's the 4 things that you have to do. You do those 4 things, and I tell you, you'll be right. You'll just your personal development will just be, bloody accelerated.
Well, Tyson, I've written a book called A Life Less Stressed, and I have to tell people it's aspirational, not autobiographical. And you know, we should collaborate, Tyson, because I'm halfway through a book too, and my working title is Evolution Bites Back.
Oh my God. That's so cool, because
don't you
definitely
dare
have to work together now. No, but I have to tell you what. I mean, I told you the working title.
Okay. I told you mine.
The
no
title,
one's listening anyway.
The actual title now it's called "The Tree That Kills You Back."
Ah, okay.
So I think we're on a
similar
vibe
journey
here, bros.
Yeah. We'll have to get. Listen,
I mean, and
I told you,
let's have another yarn.
We will, and I told you before we came on that, you know, in that last chapter where you wrote this, be like your place, and you said, here's a section, it's about 5 or 6 pages or something, I forget how long, and you said, read it out aloud to someone who's got their eyes closed, and that's exactly what I did. My wife lay on the couch, and we spent about 15 or 20 minutes. I read it very slowly. I think you would have been proud of me. and she loved it, and I loved it. And I wished I was lying on the couch having it read to me, because the imagery about connection was so powerful.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in the Western medicine, we get excited that there's a gut-brain connection, even within the same body. Wow, how amazing. Something within the same body is connected. But that piece was just all connecting, and it was just took us to places we haven't been. It was fantastic.
It's great, but I'm concerned about that too, because I just feel like that was audience capture for me, and that I was leaning towards guru stuff.
No.
There's so much in that book that just makes me cringe, because I look at it and there's a patterning that's happened that I wasn't aware of, where I was running guru programming. You know, I find it amazing that the things that people quote the most back at me are the stupidest things. Like I have one sentence that starts with the words "the battle between good and evil." I'm like, and I just roll my eye. I can't believe I said that. Like, what a tool.
But listen,
you know?
I got to tell you, by the time you get to the end of the book, you know, the voice is there. The voice is there, and I didn't take it as a guru thing at all. I just took it as a, hey, listen to this. We're having a yarn. You know, us two were having a yarn. As I said to you at the beginning, I just was listening. But this gave me an opportunity to talk.
I'm trying to honour that now by de-guruing my discourses. So I'll let you know how it goes. It's very difficult to write outside of that voice.
Okay, well, listen, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you so much for the book. And hey, maybe we will connect and talk about our books. I'll show you mine if you show me yours.
Yeah. But just don't laugh. All right.
Take care.
See ya.
Well, I just knew that was going to be a great conversation. And really, it's such a lovely book. It's such a, you know, Tyson was saying that he felt he'd become a guru, but it wasn't that at all. The voice, the two of us two. He uses that term, us two, right throughout the book. A plural first person, I think it's called. Anyway, it's an unusual turn of phrase, but it's one that definitely connected with me, because us two were having a yarn and I was listening to his perspective and his stories, and I just thought they were terrific. And if you haven't had a chance to read Sand Talk, I would suggest you do. And we will have, we must put a map of all the nations, the 250 nations that make up Australia, and also recognise, I thought that was so interesting about borders when they're not straight. It kind of tells you that there's something very organic and geographical about how they're all laid out. And the fact that all those languages evolved in individually is amazing. And that whole connect, like the whole protocol to firstly respect something. In the protocol of Indigenous knowledge, to first respect something, to then connect with it and explore it, to reflect on it, and then to actually direct action about it or not. I thought that was just so powerful and such an important message. And it's a theme that I think we have a lot to learn from, lessons from the past. That's a theme we're going to be exploring a lot more this year. I hope this finds you well. Until next time, this is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. This podcast provides general information and discussion about medicine, health, and related subjects. The content is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice or as a substitute for care by a qualified medical practitioner. If you or any other person
has a medical concern, he or she should consult with an appropriately qualified medical practitioner. Guests who speak in this podcast express their own opinions, experiences, and conclusions.